Hi there, Matt Easton of Scholagladiatoria. So a weapon that's a little bit out of the ordinary, a little bit different. As you folks know, I buy and sell antique swords and collect antique swords, and every now and again something a little bit unusual comes through my hands, and I haven't owned one of these for many years. And it is, what is it? It looks like a hanger or a cutlass, doesn't it? But it's a little bit different from that. It is a Pioneer's sidearm. Now what denotes it or points it out as a Pioneer's sidearm is that very sharp, notice I'm not touching it, a very sharp saw edge on the back. And so these were sidearms, they were weapons of self-protection, but equally they were potentially tools as well. And you'll notice that, let's just ignore the saw edge for a minute, this is a solid brass hilt. This is the British 1856 pattern, incidentally, Pioneer's sidearm. And it's got two brass grips that are horizontally ribbed for your gripping pleasure, that are riveted, 1, 2, 3, 4 rivets going right the way through there, so it's pinned either side with a full width tang. So it's an incredibly tough construction. The tang is there in the middle, brass grip, and then brass guard. So it's a three-part hilt assembly, and the brass guard is pinned or riveted again at the tang there, so the tang goes all the way through to the end as well. And it's a simple knuckle bow in the 1796 shape, and in fact there was a previous version of this Pioneer sidearm, and that's probably why they kept that shape. Potentially, I have thought, if you were trying to use that saw edge, that could be advantageous if you were holding it like that. However, you couldn't lean down on the back of the sword to saw or anything like that, because this is sharpened, and as it happens this is a service sharpened one, so I'm not going to stick my hand on that edge either. This particular example is dated to January 1900 and made by Wilkinson Sword of London, and this model was actually in use for a very long time. It came in 1856, replacing an earlier model, so it was used from 1856 right the way through to about, well, the early 1900s really, about World War I. And as it happens, there are records that many of these were repurposed as naval cutlasses when naval cutlasses were in short supply. It's actually quite a nice handy weapon. I quite like it. It's got the same kind of size and weight and balance as something like a gladius. And whilst you can certainly chop with it, and it will have a very effective chop, having a straight blade and what we call a spear point there, you can see it's double-edged and it has a sharpened false edge as well, means it's particularly good for thrusting. So you could really use this thing like a very effective short sword. It's a little bit heavy in the hilt for my personal preferences, but I'd be quite happy using this. I mean, it's on the short side, but if I was going to be using a short sword or a cutlass in the sort of context that would be useful, then yeah, it's a pretty good sidearm actually. I personally prefer something like a cutlass. I just grab one. So an actual naval cutlass actually has a big handguard, and that's the big thing that's really lacking with this Pioneer sword, is that it only has a knuckle bow. However, whilst it only has a knuckle bow, that's largely because if you're a pioneer, or essentially someone who's likely to be doing things like building fortification works and digging tunnels and trenches and, you know, manning all sorts of machines and engines and stuff, you don't want something that's going to get in your way. And the problem with naval cutlasses is having that large bowl that's symmetrical. It does get in the way if you're wearing it, which of course sailors didn't usually wear them if they're going about their work on a ship, because the cutlasses would be stored there and they'd only bring them out if they actually needed to use them. But anyway, it's quite a nice weapon. I wasn't very keen on these when I was younger. I actually owned one of these when I started out collecting swords when I was in my late teens. And I sold it, and I regretted it ever since. I've now got this, and I've actually sold this as well. This is actually going off to a customer, and I've sold it through my Eastern Antique Arms website, linked below. But it's a really nice example, being Wilkinson, being in great condition. As you can see, it's still got the a bright, almost unblemished blade. You know, it's got no pitting or anything like that. It's service sharpened, the saw edge is sharp. All of the brass is in good shape with a nice aged patina, and unusually it has the scabbard. For some reason these scabbards tend to get lost from these, so you find a fair number. It's not a really rare sword, but you find most of these without scabbards. To find them with scabbards is fairly hard, and obviously that increases the value of them. So yeah, as a weapon, not bad. It's lacking a bit of hand protection, but the reason for that is because you're going to spend most of your time carrying it, and incidentally it would be worn with a frog hanging from a belt. You see it's got a stud sticking out the side of the top of the scabbard there, and a leather that sits in a leather frog that hangs from your belt, usually of a Sam Brown kind of design, or a simple waist belt. So yeah, there we go, the 1856 Pioneer's sidearm. It's essentially a hanger with a saw edge, and there is one record, so I guess some people might think of this, and I did stumble across it. There is one record that I found, actually from the India Mutiny. It might refer to this model, or it might refer to the earlier model. I would put my money on it being one of the earlier models, but there is a record of someone using that saw edge in combat to kill an opponent, which doesn't really bear thinking about. I believe that in the Geneva Convention these would be banned because of that saw edge. So there we go, folks, an interesting weapon of the British military, and of course there are similar weapons in the German and Austrian and other militaries of Europe. It was a popular sort of theme for certain pioneers' swords and bayonets to have a saw edge on the back. Cheers, folks!
Thank you for watching. Please subscribe, follow us on Facebook. You can buy t-shirts through Spreadshirt, support us on Patreon, or follow us on Pinterest. Thank you.